Let's talk about something that comes up in my ESL classes more often than you might expect: anime. Specifically, why so many Japanese adults watch it, why so many of them are embarrassed to admit it, and why the ones who do admit it almost always reach for the same safe, socially acceptable titles instead of telling you what they actually watch. If you have ever asked a Japanese person what their favorite anime is and gotten a very generic answer, this video is going to explain exactly what is happening in that moment. First, let's address the embarrassment factor because it is real and it is specific. Anime in Japan occupies a complicated cultural position that is very different from how it is perceived internationally. Outside Japan, anime has become genuinely mainstream. Fans around the world of all ages and backgrounds watch it openly, discuss it publicly, and consider it a legitimate art form and entertainment medium without any particular social stigma attached. Inside Japan, the relationship is more complicated. Anime is simultaneously everywhere, in convenience stores, on television, referenced in advertising, embedded in daily life, and yet openly identifying as someone who watches anime seriously as an adult can still carry a degree of social awkwardness in certain contexts. The reason comes down to association. In Japanese popular culture, the word otaku, which broadly refers to someone with an intense, consuming interest in anime, manga, or related content, has historically carried negative connotations. An otaku is stereotypically imagined as a socially isolated, poorly groomed adult man who had retreated from normal social participation into a world of fictional characters and fantasy content. That image has softened considerably over the years as anime has become more globally prestigious and as the otaku community has become more visible and more diverse. But the old association has not completely disappeared, and for many Japanese adults, particularly those in professional environments where image and social perception matter, admitting to serious anime fandom still feels like it invites a certain kind of judgment. This is why the safe anime answers exist. When a Japanese person is asked about anime in a semi-formal or professional context, including during an English conversation lesson, many of them instinctively reach for titles that are so universally recognized and socially acceptable that mentioning them carries no risk. Dragon Ball is safe because everyone knows it, and it has been part of Japanese culture for decades. Doraemon is safe because it is essentially a national institution, a children's classic that adults can reference nostalgically without any implication that they are currently consuming anime seriously. Detective Conan is safe because it is a long-running mystery series with broad mainstream appeal that does not carry any niche or embarrassing associations. These are the titles people mention when they want to acknowledge that yes, they are aware of anime, without revealing anything about what they actually watch in private. What they actually watch in private is often something entirely different. The genre preferences, the specific titles, and the depth of engagement that many Japanese adult anime viewers have with the medium are things they share selectively, with close friends who share the same interests, in online communities where anonymity provides cover, or occasionally in an ESL lesson with a foreign tutor who seems genuinely interested and non-judgmental. That last context is actually one of the more interesting dynamics that shows up in conversation classes, because the relative distance of speaking to a foreigner in English can make certain disclosures feel safer than making them in Japanese to someone from their own social circle. Gintama is a perfect example of this phenomenon, and it is one of my personal favorites, so I want to spend a moment on it because it illustrates the point beautifully. Gintama is a long-running parody anime that takes the setting of late Edo period Japan, a historical era that is considered important and serious in Japanese cultural education, and uses it as the backdrop for relentless, irreverent humor that makes fun of Japanese culture, Japanese history, anime conventions, other popular manga and anime series, and really anything it can get its hands on. It is extraordinarily clever, deeply layered with cultural references that require real familiarity with Japanese history and pop culture to fully appreciate, and genuinely one of the most creatively ambitious comedy anime ever produced. And yet Gintama fans, as some of my students have pointed out, often do not identify themselves as Gintama fans in casual conversation. Part of this is because explaining what Gintama is requires explaining the parody format and the cultural references, which is a longer conversation than most people want to have when the topic of anime comes up briefly. But part of it is also that Gintama's humor is deliberately crude, irreverent, and willing to mock things that Japanese culture generally treats with respect. Admitting that you love an anime that makes fun of samurai culture, pokes at social norms, and regularly includes toilet humor is a different kind of disclosure than admitting you watched Dragon Ball as a child. It says something specific about your sense of humor and your relationship with authority and tradition, and not everyone wants to make that disclosure in a professional or semi-professional context. Now, let's talk about the IT industry connection because this is a pattern that shows up consistently, and it is genuinely interesting. Among Japanese workers, anime fandom and the broader otaku identity are significantly more common and more openly acknowledged in the technology sector than in most other professional environments. Software developers, systems engineers, data analysts, and others working in IT-related fields in Japan tend to have a higher tolerance for and participation in anime and gaming culture than, for example, workers in banking, law, traditional manufacturing management, or government. There are a few reasons for this. Technology sector workplaces in Japan, particularly in companies with younger workforces or international influences, tend to have slightly more relaxed social cultures than traditional Japanese corporate environments. The intense hierarchy and image consciousness of the old-school Japanese office is less dominant in tech, which means employees have more freedom to express personal interests without the same level of social risk. Additionally, the global technology community has a long-established connection to gaming and anime culture that normalizes these interests in a way that other industries simply do not. When your international colleagues and the broader global community of developers and engineers share similar interests, the social cost of admitting to those interests domestically decreases. The specific genres that IT workers tend to gravitate toward are also worth noting because they reflect something about the psychological appeal of those genres for people in high-pressure, detail-oriented, analytical work. Isekai anime, a genre built around the premise of a character being transported from ordinary life into a completely different world, often a fantasy setting with its own rules and systems, is enormously popular in this demographic. The appeal is not hard to understand. If you spend your working hours navigating complex systems, solving technical problems, and operating within rigid professional and social constraints, the fantasy of being dropped into a completely different world where your existing skills might make you exceptional, where the rules are different, and where the social obligations of your current life do not apply is genuinely attractive. Isekai is escapism with a specific flavor, not just fantasy, but the fantasy of a complete reset. Shonen anime, the action and fighting genre typically aimed at a younger male demographic but watched across all ages, remains consistently popular because it delivers something that adult professional life rarely provides directly. Clear stakes, visible progress, the satisfaction of effort leading to tangible growth, and the emotional catharsis of watching characters push past their limits through determination and willpower. For someone whose daily professional wins are incremental, invisible, and rarely celebrated, watching a character achieve something through sheer force of will and visible struggle is genuinely satisfying in a way that is hard to replicate elsewhere. The darker genres, psychological thrillers, dystopian narratives, anime that engages seriously with questions of human nature, morality, and social systems, also attract significant interest from analytical, intellectually engaged viewers. Series that explore psychology, power structures, and the darker aspects of human behavior appeal to people who are comfortable sitting with complexity and who find entertainment that challenges their thinking more satisfying than entertainment that simply distracts them. Talking about anime with Japanese students who are willing to move past the safe answers is genuinely one of the more enjoyable parts of conversation teaching because it opens up a space for real exchange. When a student trusts you enough to mention what they actually watch, not just Dragon Ball, but the specific niche title they have been following for years, that is a moment of genuine connection that a scripted lesson topic rarely produces. Those conversations tend to be the ones that both tutor and student remember. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful or relatable, please subscribe to join my journey toward 2,000 videos. On this channel, I share unfiltered ESL stories. Yes, even the toxic ones, alongside Japanese and Korean language tips, my plants, my pets, and the reality of solo living. If you'd like to support my work and help me build my retirement fund, you can buy a treat for my pets via the link in the description below. Every bit of support helps keep this channel independent and growing. See you in the next one.